On the podcast in the past, I've spoken about how to come up with your unique selling proposition or your unique value proposition. So your USP, your UVP, it's called a whole host of other things. The idea behind your unique value proposition is this: that in the business that you're engaged in, or when it comes to how you carry out your service, there's something really unique and valuable to you that you provide that nobody else can. And so, if you have something like that, then in theory, it should be a lot more easier to market yourself or to sell yourself because you're going to be unique. So, people talk about all sorts of things: unique value proposition, your branding statement, positioning, all kinds of things. And when we sit down in seminars or academic circles or talking amongst ourselves, fellow professionals, the question now becomes, how do we find that thing that is unique to you? Now, some people like to sort this out by engaging in brainstorming sessions. You sit down, you, your spouse, or your business partner, who else, and you guys sit and come up with a whole bunch of ideas about why you think you're special or your product or your service is special. And I'd say typically that's how people in our space, that's the event and the wedding space, that's how we get involved. That's how we engage in the process. So that's what we do. So, what was I? Sorry about that. For those of you who've been following the podcast for a while, well, someone just tapped on my window. That's because I'm making the podcast recording in the car. If you've been listening to the podcast or following me for a while, I'm sure you'd appreciate that we've come around full circle in a way, because the very first time I made a video, I happened to I was on a fuel queue. I think that was back in Goodluck Jonathan's regime, and we had fuel scarcity at the time, and I had just been listening to podcasts, and I figured instead of just wasting time on the fuel queue, I might as well just start putting out some of the knowledge that I have on the internet. And so that was one of the first precursors to the podcast and the blog and then all of that. Anyway, so we've come now full circle because I'm on another queue again. We seem to be having fuel hiccups, as usually happens when we get round to election cycles, because we're in 2022. Elections are going to be in 2023. And so anyway, this is just a long story to say that bottom line is this feels very familiar. I'm on a fuel queue waiting to buy fuel, and the wrap on my window was just from touts, because touts are always trying to, whenever you have fuel scarcities, touts are trying to help you, should we say helping? And the touts are trying to, get money from you to buy fuel, help you shunt the queue, all sorts of things. So that's what that noise was at the background. It was just, touts wrapping up my window. I don't know if if that part crept into the recording, but if it did, that's what that whole thing was. Anyway, so back to what I was saying about your unique value proposition. So in my own opinion, I think that's how a lot of us get involved in this exercise. You say you want to be a wedding photographer, your girlfriend says you take really good pictures, or your boyfriend says you're very good at planning stuff, and that's how you get involved, basically, and you come up with what you think your unique value proposition is. Now, with the benefit of the sales experience that I've had and the sales knowledge that I've garnered, I have been preaching about another way that you can get your unique value proposition, and that is by speaking directly to your customer. Because when you speak to your customer, if you know the right kinds of questions to ask, they're going to tell you about what they found most valuable from working with you, and you're going to be able to glean what your unique value proposition is. And an example that I give on the podcast every now and then is about how as a younger photographer in Lagos, close to about 10 years ago, I came into this with the thesis that there was a lot of Photoshop going on at the time, and I guess Photoshop is here to stay and will always be here. But I came into this with the thesis that there are going to be people out there who do not like Photoshop, and that is where I would make my market. Now, I must confess, even though I've seen other photographers establish that, especially on the Lagos axis, a much more simpler form of photography without all the Photoshop and computer wizardry, is not something I've been able to establish myself. And I always assumed that that was going to be my own unique value proposition and my own unique selling point. And so I had always approached the market, my marketing, my messaging, my sales, with that in mind. That with me, you don't have to worry about Photoshop. It's about keeping it simple, you're beautiful enough, those kinds of terms. Basically, just pointing out that we don't need computer wizardry to make our brides beautiful. After a while, I learned about the process of sales, the discipline of selling, and I learned this whole thing about talking to your customer. And so I started asking customers directly, after we're done with everything. Thank you very much. Hope we're able to achieve so and so. By the way, why did you work with me and not XYZ? Because I get real conversational with my clients, and so sometimes I get to find out who it is that they're speaking with, the other runner-ups. And so I'd ask all those kinds of questions to try and dig down to what they found most valuable about the experience. Because when you find something that is truly, the magic comes when you have a couple of people, maybe 5 or 6 people, saying that this is the reason why we went with you. Now, when it tallies up like that, you know for sure that that is part of your USP, and you should be putting it as part of your marketing and part of your sales messaging. Because if it resonated clearly with those people, then it's also going to resonate with others. Sorry guys, excuse me, I'm going to be distracted for a little bit, and that's because the queue is moving, so I'm having to drive along as I am making this podcast recording. Wow, these are adventures in making podcasts. I wonder how many other podcast hosts have to... Okay, well, you don't have to, because I could have waited and gone home before I made the recording. Okay, alright, so I've moved. Now, where was I? Okay, yes. So when you get a bunch of people who agree on what is the main reason about why they work with you, then you know that that's the key thing that you have to put in your to make a key part of your messaging and in your sales process. Now, sometimes this come up with some difficulties because, like in my own case, I'm sure that there's some of you out there who, when you ask these questions, you're given feedback that you're not quite sure what to do with it. And now the famous story that I've given, at least famous on the podcast anyway, is about the first customer that I spoke to try and find out what it is that she found most valuable about the whole process. And her answer was, I don't know, I just like you. And what do you do with that kind of information? I just like you. It's not something that you can put as part of your sales and your marketing material. I'm the most likable photographer in Abuja. Another person said, you are very professional. What else? So apart from the people who just said, I just like you, there were also those people who would talk about my professionalism, the way that I would take the initiative on providing the service. I don't let the ball drop. Let's see, what else? Basically, professionalism and sales and stuff like that were what came up in those conversations. But it's hard to work those things into a sales pitch or marketing copy if you're going to put things on Instagram, for instance. Like, what are you going to say? I'm the most professional photographer in Abuja, or whatever. So, bottom line is, I'm just trying to say that it's an activity that you ought to engage in. Speak to your customer, because you find out what it is that is most valuable about the service you provide, and is going to be able to give you sound marketing copy that you can use. But another added advantage of doing this is, even if you can't come up with good copy for your sales and marketing material, it does give you some confidence going out, knowing that you're not a fraud, that you actually are the cat's whiskers. Like in my own case, it gives me a lot of confidence, whether creating material for the podcast or going out on sales calls and meetings with people, knowing that there are lots of people who have done business with me in the past and who say I'm the most professional person that they've worked with. They like my sense of drive and initiative and the level of customer care that I bring to the game. So it brings a level of confidence that even if you don't know how to tie it into your marketing material, it bleeds out in the way that you speak to customers, customers, potential clients, and also potential business partners. So it actually is a good exercise to engage in, even if you don't get any intel, any information that you can use to change your marketing. Now, why did I remember this today? It's because I've been chatting with another wedding planner about possible client, and I noticed that one of the things she said was that she wanted a photographer who was mature and professional. And I had a bit of a laugh to myself anyway. I mean, professional. Like, how do you work that into your sales and marketing process? I am the most mature wedding photographer in Abuja. Anyway, so that conversation just reminded me about this conversation that we've had on the podcast in the past, and maybe just reiterate it again, that you should be speaking with your customers to find out what it is that they find most valuable in working with you. And if you're able to get words and phrases that you can use in your sales and your marketing, then that's very good. But if you can't, if they give you feedback that you can't work into your sales process, that's not a disadvantage. It's going to imbue you with a lot of confidence, and that will reflect in the way that you reach out to customers. And the more confident you feel, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're more confident, the more credible that you appear. So, yeah, that's it basically. So, I'm going to hop off this recording now so I can pay attention to the cue. You know how it is with fuel cues. Start, stop, start, stop. And let's hope that this is not going to remain a regular feature of Nigerian society, because it's a pity that in this generation, I mean, for a young man like me, and now that I have children, that this seems to be almost an annual affair. Granted, it's getting a lot better, this whole fuel issues, than when I was a teenager, back in the military administration. But it's a sad state of affairs, basically, when a young man has to grow up with these sorts of things, from childhood through teens into fatherhood, and then we seem to be repeating the same cycle with our children, experiencing all these things, political and social malaise. So, hopefully, as we grow older and become much more responsible for ourselves and the polity, and we get involved in public policy, discourse, and governance, it's my hope that with the same level of dedication and skill that we bring to growing our businesses, that we should be able to bring that level of skill and discipline and dedication to building our societies and building our governments as well. So that's it to me. That's it from me today on the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Abuja-based sales consultant and event media professional, Tavishima Ayede. Thanks for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording. And for those of you who are based in Abuja, Nigeria, hopefully this stint of fuel queue is just going to be something very brief and should be over in a few days, hopefully, so we can get on with our lives and our businesses. So thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.